Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, January 27th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Springford Board of School Directors believes the community has the right to bring before the board issues and concerns they may have about items on the agenda or about items in general which affect the district or their children. Because of this belief and philosophy, the board will schedule a time at the beginning and conclusion of every meeting to have an opportunity for community members to share their concerns with the board. At the start of the meeting, members from the public may comment on agenda items only. The school board will move through the meeting agenda, then at the end, when prompted, there will be a time for public comment. This meeting is being filmed to be broadcast on community cable channels and online. Individuals intending to make public comments should be aware that they are being filmed. Speakers will be asked to state their name and the area in which you reside before your comment.
Good evening. Mrs. Bickert, can we please have a roll call?
Yes, all board members are in person this evening.
Thank you very much. As far as announcements go, the board did meet in an exec session to discuss a legal matter prior to the start of the meeting. Mr. Rizzo, do you have anything?
Just very briefly, we have our technology director with us here this evening, so I want to welcome Dr. Jason Hilt, standing there in the back. Thank you. That's it.
Yes. Welcome to the district, Mr. Holt. Okay, moving on. Public to be heard on agenda items. If there's anyone that wishes to speak, please approach your podium with your name, township of residence, as well as the agenda item for which you're referencing. Okay. Seeing as there no one is approaching the podium, we'll move on to our first presentation. And our only presentation will have Dr. Tina Giambattista and Dr. Robin Moyer come to discuss our ELD program expansion.
Good evening and thank you. So we are here to present to you the expansion of our regional programming for our English language development at the elementary level. We've worked with a group of administrators, including Chastity Cooper, who is the principal of UPE, Beth Lease, our Human Resources Director, Dr. Katie Gardy, our Director of Curriculum, Mr. Jim Fink, our CFO, and Aaron Crew, our Director of Communications, along with Dr. Moyer. Before we begin, we wanted to share this slide with you on our tenets of what we feel our English language program is all about. And the first one brings us to our ELD mission. Our mission here is supporting multilingual learners in achieving academic success and English proficiency. Our goals for implementing our English language program here in Springford include providing students with the opportunity to improve or develop their English language skills, help communicate effectively in academic, social, and future career settings, and to support students who are multilingual at their language acquisition level. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Moyer.
First of all, thank you for giving us a moment to speak this evening. I just wanted to give a little bit of background on what we currently do at Springford briefly, which will allow us to talk a little bit about what we're looking to do moving forward. So in our elementary English language development program, we really have two different options for parents. The one that most take advantage of is our regional or centralized program at Brook Elementary School. Students who qualify, you have to be below a certain language level when you come into the district, are provided the opportunity to come to Brook and become a student of Brook and part of our Brook community. In doing that, we bring students from all 7 elementary schools to Brook Elementary each year, K-4. What that does for our students is it provides an opportunity for us to enhance the language instruction we provide. Our English language development teachers at Brook are both elementary certified and language certified, and we are able to provide some pretty comprehensive embedded instruction to students, referred to as sheltered instruction. What this does is it promotes inclusion for our ELD friends, because they're not the only student in the class learning a second language. It's actually pretty neat to see the community that they build amongst themselves and with the other students. These students are pulled into smaller classes for language arts until their language levels get to a certain place, and then we push them out into the regular education classroom for language arts. They're fully included in all math instruction in the regular classroom, science, social studies, specials, lunch, recess, the school bus, and every other part of the day, which is really fantastic to see. This allows them to learn English, which is a big task, and also have instruction in the core content standards that we would expect for all Spring-Ford students. It allows us also to provide that instruction in small groups, which we know is more beneficial as we are accommodating at times upwards of 20 to 25 different languages in the building. And it has allowed us to create some really neat home and school partnerships with these multilingual families. I know some board members have been to some of our family engagement activities, and we're pretty proud of what we're able to do. So the reason that we began talking about this and the idea of expansion, to put it bluntly, is we're growing. Our student population and our language population continues to rise, and the language needs in the district continue to rise as well. So an expansion would allow us to better accommodate those growing needs. It would allow the district to better spread out our resources so that we're best able to get to those tenants we just referred to. It will also let us to get back to those smaller group sizes that the program was built upon, which as our population continues to grow becomes harder and harder. And finally, it, we believe, sets us up for future demographic changes, or at least allows us to be a little bit more future-minded with those types of things. So just to give you a little bit of information, everybody always asks me what are the numbers. The bottom line here on the graph shows that we are about 185 K-4 elementary Ls, and in 2025, 2021, that was 99. So we've just about doubled our elementary population. You'll see a similar doubling in our K-12 population as well, as we have about 350 total K-12. One thing I would like to point out, though, is this is that 350 is reflective of identified current Ls. What it doesn't reflect are Ls that came to us as first graders or second graders, worked in our program, learned English, were reclassified as former English language learners, and now are out and aren't counted as that number, but are still multilingual learners.
Okay, so now that brings us to our expansion plan. Our current regional programming, K-4, is currently going to Brook Elementary. We did weigh a couple of different options. We did bring those options to Dr. Murray and Mr. Rizzo as part of this process as we started back in the beginning of the year. And we decided for the next regional site, the best possible outcome would be to have that site at Upper Providence Elementary. Mrs. Cooper has been gracious and welcoming of this idea. We brought her in as soon as we determined that this second regional site would be the best option for us moving forward, and she's been involved since. So we have a 4-year phase-in plan with gradual implementation over the next 4. The school site breakdown is going to be the following. For Brook Elementary, it will serve Brook, Limerick, Evans, and Royersford. And for Upper Providence Elementary, that will serve Upper Providence, Spring City, and Oaks Elementary. Our timeline looks as such. Next year will be phase 1, and we will start with our current kindergarten students that are at Brook. If they meet the demographic area that puts them over at Upper Providence, they will move to Upper Providence for first grade. I believe currently that affects about eight students. And any incoming kindergarten students that register are in the region that would either attend Spring City and Upper Providence, and the third one, Oaks, thank you. Phase 2 would be year 26-27. The kindergarten, first and second grade will be the students that were already there, and in new incoming kindergarten will be registered as well. So as the students matriculate up, we'll include the next kindergarten families coming in. That's kind of the phase-in program over the next 4 years. So by the end of the 28-29 school year, we'll have a continuum of services through kindergarten, fourth grade. And all new students that are coming in to the district and register, if they're in Region 1 or Region 2, that's how they will be appropriated to either building. So following that, and most importantly, our next steps. First and foremost is the communication plan. We've done a lot of planning behind the scenes. It's now time after this presentation to start, putting our stuff in writing and getting communication out to the families, and that will involve Mrs. Crew, and we'll be notifying them about the move, providing language support. If we have to host any informational sessions, we'd be happy to do that. Send regular updates and gather some feedback. The next other step would be to do a survey on what we need for curriculum and resource. We'll do an assessment, and that will help, Dr. Gardy will help us through that process. Professional development will definitely need to occur for the teachers over at Upper Providence, for kindergarten and first grade teachers. So we'll get started on doing some planning for that. We're also considering in the next couple of years whether or not there is a thirst for extending the ELD day to an extended day instead of just the AM or PM kindergarten, to provide them with more time to receive English language services. And then obviously involving Ms. Lease on staffing and for the expansion planning. That will involve Ms. Lease and Jim Fink, who is our money man. So that is all we have as far as our overview for our expansion plan. And now we appreciate your time and thank you, and we can open it up to questions.
So thank you, Dr. Jade. Thank you, Dr. Moyer, for this presentation. Before I open up to questions and comments for the board, I'll just say a couple things struck me. Is number one, I'll at least speak for myself, this is not a surprise that this is coming, right? We've been hearing since I've been on the board now, the exponential growth in our ELD population for a variety of reasons. So I'm really glad to see that we are looking to accommodate and provide the environment that is necessary for these kids to thrive. So thank you for that. And then the other piece, which is going to slip my mind right now, I'm sure it'll come back to me, but I'll think about that, put a pin in it, and let me go to our board. So I know, Mrs. Westwood, you do have a question?
Yes, thank you for the presentation, and agree, it's great to see our ELD program growing. I don't know that you'll know these, I know you won't know the answer to the second one yet, but to the first one, just given some of the other plans that we have with movement, so for example, the vote that we made back in June to move fifth grade back into elementary school, will that go into your evaluation with numbers not only in the short term, but then for growth year over year? And then the second, of course, is I think this is a wonderful idea. I'm glad that you're engaging the appropriate folks to consider costs around curriculum, staffing, et cetera. And then if extended day is offered, what the differential will be for that.
Yeah, so both very valid questions. We did talk about the moving parts of all of the future projects that are going to take place and how that would affect the students moving over. Right now, we see it as a minimal effect because we currently will have 8 first grade students, and we don't know how many incoming kindergarten students, but we don't think that it will affect the building population that much, being at Upper Providence. They have a lot of space. Secondly, as far as curriculum, yes, there will be, if we move to consider full day or extended day, early ELD services, there will be some curriculum ramifications. We will have to purchase curriculum, and we'll be working with Dr. Gardy on that. I will be remiss if I didn't say that Dr. Moyer has been very reluctant to let go of his family over there at Brook, but he was
It is-
good this year.
Yeah, it is a joyous, anytime we get together, it is a joyous occasion. I was just going to say the one last thing that did come to my mind as Mrs. Westwood, your comments jogged it, which is I just want to thank you for the thoughtful approach to the transition, because hearing about this, that was a concern in terms of, what is that, just in terms of being able to limit the transitions and not have this be a disruptive process. So I love the phased-in approach, so thank you. Mr. Jackson, did I see your hand on that button?
Yes. Based on the creation and development of this program, I'm going to assume there's been some cost talk over a timeline or projected budgets. Since you said Mr. Fink, the money man, he's not here to defend himself, so I'll step in. Do we have any idea of cost over the next 5 years?
As far as extending the day for curriculum purchases, we don't. However, right now, it will be cost neutral to send the students that we have currently over to Upper Providence because they're usually in the general ed curriculum. Any monies that were afforded to them at Brook will follow them to Upper Providence. As far as staff development, we may be able to, I'm going to defer to Katie because we did talk about some professional development over some in-service time or perhaps over the summer to in-service our kindergarten and first grade teachers at Upper Providence, but that would be a minimal cost.
What does minimal cost mean?
We had considered looking at the contracts that we have with the MCIU because we do get full-day training with that, as well as our department chair and our current ELD teachers that could support teachers at Upper Providence.
So that means what? I mean, we have a program here that we're strongly in support of, and it's just odd to me that there's no cost that anyone wants to speak to that's involved here. It could be budgetary costs, it could be projected costs, but there has to be some cost, or is the position that this is no cost?
No, the position is that there is not any cost. There's definitely going to be a cost down the line, but right now we're in the process where we just wanted to provide an overview, and our next steps is to really get detailed information on cost of the students moving over and what the professional development looks like.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like there may be some optionality. So to Mr. Jackson's point, if you just move the students, or to their point, if you just move the students over with no changes, no additional staff, no extended day, et cetera, that sounds like that'd be part of budgeted costs that we already have. But if you're hiring more staff, if you choose to extend the day, that would be something I would imagine would come back to us for review to discuss.
Well, I was asking the individuals that are making the presentation, but
So in that four-year phase-in plan, there will be a staffing implication to that plan. And I think Mrs. Leeson and I talked about that earlier tonight. You're looking at about a half of a teacher-ish, and I don't want to speak for Mrs. Lees, in the ELD world. The other piece of cost, which is sometimes hard to tease out, is we are provided Title III funds for ELD services specific for this reason, but we do not find out our allocation of those funds until far later than we would like to. So it's really hard to say this is what a number is going to be because we don't know what we're going to get. I will say at Brook, a lot of our costs for the program are embedded in the building budget, so those students are part of our building allocation, which I would assume they would be at Upper Providence as well.
okay, thank you for now.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I just had a very minor question, and if you don't have this information, that's totally fine. But I was just curious, Dr. Moyer, when you mentioned the 350 K through 12 students, but that are identified, but that number's not including those that already went through the program and now are not. Do you have any idea roughly of how many students that is, including them?
I don't know that I do. I mean, we would have to go back and do some back mapping. Our language families are also at times somewhat transient, so who's still here that's been in our program, I don't know that I could quantify for you. I will say at our yearly ELD night many of those high school students come back to us, so they're there. But I don't know if I can give you a number.
No problem, that's fine at all. I think, the point is that it's growing, and it's growing exponentially, and we are planning for that, and making sure that we are providing what our community needs. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. G. Dr. Moyer. Moving on to Section 4, Board and Committee Reports. We'll start with Dr. Wright with the MCIU.
I will have at the next meeting, the MCIU have not forwarded the minutes from that meeting. Thank you.
Noted. So we will make sure we cover that in February. I understand that, actually, let's move on to B, the JOC, Western Montgomery Career and Technology Center. Mrs. Weingarten?
Yes, thank you. The JOC met on January 6th. First order of business was to elect our officers, which Keith McCarrick of Upper Perk will be resuming as our chairperson, and I am honored to resume vice chair positioning. Our Skills USA Leadership Conference recap was fantastic. Mr. Livingood will invite those students to speak about that conference at an upcoming JOC meeting. 60 of those students, you probably heard me talk about Skills USA before. It's a really remarkable opportunity for our students. 60 students went to this event at Kalahari this year. So we'll have more to that when the students come back to us to speak. We also had a budget presentation. Mr. Livingood presented the proposed 25-26 budget to the JOC. And these were the highlights. In order to provide time for us to meet with the districts to review the proposed budget, we will plan to vote for that in March. At the moment, the increase is 3.26%, and and part of that includes the hiring of an assistant principal. The position would be a new position, basically working with Mr. Livingood. A big part of this is also the increased supplies and student activity, travel. There's more CTE. There's an increase in costs for things like metals and HVAC, so you can imagine where that comes in. And then there were some market value adjustments for specific positions. And let's see, we had some administrative reports. Mr. Livingood thanked the JOC while he was taking time to be with his family, and thanked the culinary instructors for the cookie trays that were distributed, which we talk about all the time because our culinary students are really remarkable, and it's quite a gift. Students will be going to the farm show and pairing with celebrity chefs on a field trip sponsored by CCAP. I'll have more on that later. They had another equipment auction, and the revenue from that was just a hair over $55,000, and they'd like to utilize those funds to purchase a much-needed van. We're still looking into the capital project fund, and we'll have it by the end of the school year. The teacher committee has been providing valuable input there. And we are waiting to hear confirmation on some grants that were submitted. The supplemental grant, the competitive equipment grant, the PA SMART grant, and a safety and security upgrade that's close to about $450,000 from Senator Penachuk. And let's see, they had a very successful open house on December 4th and pushed back the student application process so it wouldn't compete with that open house. So let's see, we had about 93 applicants so far this year as of that January meeting. March 15th is when that application window will close. And to tie things up, our next JOC meeting is on February 3rd at 7 p.m. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Weingarten. Let's see if there's a question. Dr. Wright does have a question. Before I turn it over to Dr. Wright, I just want to add one piece of color, which is when you talk about the 3.26 budget increase for the Western Center, that is not Spring Ford's share. So Springford, the share based on the sending schools, the 3 sending schools, Upper Perk, Pottsgrove, and Springford, is based on 5-year enrollments, and Springford's enrollment actually over the last 5 years has decreased relative to some of the other sending schools. So our share of that overall 3.26 that they're proposing has actually come down a bit. And we talked about having Mr. Livingood come to a board meeting to share that, but also talk about some of those asks that he's looking to build into this budget.
Thank you.
Dr. Wright?
I just wanted to mention that once again this year I have the opportunity to judge at the Skills USA next month in February, which is always great because I don't get there often to that building. It's wonderful to see the students and to eat the food. They always provide us lunch, which is wonderful. So hopefully I'll see some other board members there judging.
Thank you so much for doing that. It's very appreciated.
Yep. And moving on, if there are no additional questions and comments, we're going to move on to the Legislative Committee, for which I was going to say, Mrs. Westwood, correct me if I'm wrong, the meeting did not happen.
We had our last meeting in November, so we are on a break, but we'll be back February 5th at 6 p.m., so I'll provide an update in February.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Goldsmith, do we have a PSBA update?
Just a very minor one. On February 4th, Governor Shapiro will be presenting the 25-26 state budget. On February 7th, PSBA is going to be hosting a free webinar for school board members to discuss the impact of that budget on school districts. I'll be forwarding the link if you desire to register for it. And then PSBA has also decided now to move forward with these kind of one-pagers for school board members of really concrete aspects. This month's was Sunshine Act and what can and cannot be have to be debated with in public, and I'll be forwarding that information as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Goldsmith. Moving on, Mr. Rizzo.
Thank you. My report's a little bit lengthier this evening. January always brings on several retirees, so let's take a few moments to celebrate them. It's a long list, so hold your applause till the end. First, Tina Carfagno, elementary teacher at the 5th, 6th grade center, 22 years of service in Springford, 24 total in education. Nancy Daly, MTSS coordinator at Brook, 21 years of service in Springford. Julie David Heiser, librarian at the 5th and 6th grade center, 36 years of service in Springford, 42 total in education. Karen DeLange, special education teacher at the senior high school, 19 years of service at Springford, 27 total in education. Jane Enott, health and phys ed teacher at the 8th grade center, 26 years of service in Springford, over 33 total in education. Karen Gallagher, art teacher at the senior high school, 23 years of service in Springford. Bernadette Kuzwitz, special education teacher at the 8th grade center, 18 years of service in Springford, over 28 total in education. Dan Leopold, a special science teacher at the 9th grade center, 22 years of service in Springford, 26 total in education. Doug Miller, elementary teacher at the 5th, 6th grade center, 31 years of service in Springford. Dr. Jennifer O'Connell, elementary teacher at Brook, 25 years of service in Springford. Gigi Precario, tech ed teacher at the senior high school, 10 years of service in Springford, 20 total in education. Tacey Valentine, secretary at the senior high school, 25 years of service in Springford. Kathleen Valentine, instructional assistant at the 5th, 6th grade center, 40 years of service in Springford. Joan Weber, instructional assistant at Limerick, 23 years of service at Springford, over 29 total in education. All told, those retirees have served the Springford community for over 341 years in total, with almost 400 years in public education. We are thankful for them and their service to our community. Next, this is Board Recognition Month. January is School Board Recognition Month in Pennsylvania, and we want to take this opportunity to express our deepest gratitude to our school board members for their dedication, leadership, and commitment to the success of our students, staff, and community. Serving on a school board requires countless hours of hard work, careful decision-making, and a strong commitment to improving education for all. Your guidance and vision helps create opportunities for students to thrive, ensure that our schools remain places of learning and growth, and support the development of programs that prepare our children for a bright future. It is through your tireless efforts that our schools continue to grow and adapt to meet the needs of every student. We thank you for your time, energy, and heart that you put into serving our community and for the positive impact you make every day. We are so incredibly grateful for all that you do. And in closing, I would like to say this. Please enjoy this fun video from the Upper Providence Elementary School students.
Good evening, everyone. I call this meeting of the Spring Fun School Board to order. Tonight we will be discussing a very exciting proposal. Should we switch to a 4-day school week with a 3-day weekend? Vice President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. Imagine this. Every week, students and teachers get an extra day to relax, recharge, and enjoy the weekend. A 3-day weekend could make everyone more happier and more productive.
But wait, if we shorten the school week, won't the school days feel too long? I mean, imagine math class going on until dinner time.
No problem. We'll bring snacks to math class. Problem solved.
Jimmy has a sandwich. He eats 3/4 of it at school. How much does he have left?
I'm all for the 3-day weekend, but what about extracurricular activities? What if for basketball practice, band rehearsals, and all the clubs?
Easy. We move them to the 3-day weekends. Picture it, band practice and sleepovers on Fridays. But when parents have to find childcare for that extra day off, that could be challenging for some families.
Or it could be a chance for more family adventures, more time to go on hikes, visit museums, or just relax at home.
I can finally use all those airline miles I've been saving up all these years. Paris, here we come.
Or maybe we just bring them to work with us. Lately, I've been thinking that we could have an extra set of hands.
You've got a point. A 3-day weekend might give families more bonding time. But what if students forget everything they learned over the extra day off?
We can quiz them on Mondays. Pop quiz. What did you do this weekend?
3 days off isn't so bad. Besides, sometimes my kid forgets what I tell him 3 minutes after I say it.
I think we need to hear from the students on this one. What do you think of a 3-day weekend?
We love it. The 3-day weekend means more times for video games, hanging out, and maybe even catching up on homework.
Plus, we would be so refreshing and ace every test.
It looks like everyone's on board. Shall we take a vote? Then we can send to the superintendent for final approval. All in favor?
Hold on. If a 3-day weekend is so awesome, wouldn't a 4-day weekend be even better?
Now that's just ridiculous. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Although, she may be onto something. Who likes Mondays, right? This way we would never have to suffer a Monday again.
Oh yeah. It'll make Sundays a little more better, knowing that you have the extra day off.
Then the weekend is more balanced. 2 days off to begin with and 2 days at the end of the week.
Hey, wait a second. I have an even better great idea.
Excuse me, Miss Superintendent, but have you seen the board's latest
Not
proposal?
yet, no. Wait, there must be a mistake here. This says they're proposing a 7-day weekend?
That is correct, ma'am. Caused quite a stir at last night's meeting.
I love it! When can we start?
I am speechless. All I know is I want to put my petition in for the Spring Fun School Board, or however I get on that. But thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope that these students are watching or have seen this, and just want to thank you for all the effort that you put into this, because there's nothing that could be more special.
And thank you for these amazing drawings and thank you cards. It's very, very, very appreciated.
Could the board get a copy of that, Mr. Rizzo? At least I would like a copy of it. I can't speak for these other board people, but yeah.
I'm posting it to the internet as we speak.
Thank you, Ms. Carew. I think I heard some insinuation to costs in there, maybe. Yeah, yep.
I can't imagine who that was.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was wonderful.
Yep,
Thank
and
you
that
so
concludes
much.
my report. Excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to, before we move on to the solicitor's report, just say one thing, because we know that the retirements oftentimes come through in January, and so it's no surprise that we have so many names on the list. But I have to just say, as I went through the agenda, there were so many names on this list that are familiar to me and have impacted my family personally. And I just want to congratulate all the retirees, thank them for their dedication, because you have made a profound impact on our students that is going to last for very long. So much so that I will say that as a younger member of my family has asked me to vote no on this action item for hopes that we can keep some of these people here so that she can have them in the future. But I told her that would not be something that would reward them for all their time. So thank you. Okay. Moving on, Mr. Fitzgerald, solicitor's report.
Yes. Briefly, I wanted to bring mention to an issue that started to gain traction last week, kind of nationally, and that is the potential of immigration enforcement at what was once considered sensitive locations, but no longer, and that includes schools. I don't know necessarily if what has occurred over the last week necessarily caught districts off guard, but I think what it has resulted in is districts are preparing accordingly for whatever potential there is of immigration enforcement coming to our schools prospectively. Just kind of background legally where we stand. First, there is a constitutional right to school for individuals who may be undocumented. Okay, so that's a long-standing requirement under the U.S. Constitution, and students, whether they are undocumented or not, have statutory rights under FERPA as well. So there are privacy protections in that regard too. What we've learned over the last number of weeks is what to be looking for if and when this were to occur in terms of some sort of immigration enforcement at our schools. I've spoken to Mr. Rizzo about this, and this is true. This is a lot of districts are discussing this at this point. There are different levels of legal documentation we may get that mandate requirement of cooperation, and others where it's kind of up to the district. But I think one of the important things to know is if you get a federally issued judicial warrant, we have to comply. That is an obligation. Others, though, I'm going to suggest to the district, as I am with other districts, that there be discussions both at the building level, the DO level, and likely with my office, should these events present themselves over the next several months. So this is a fluid area. I mean, one of the things that came out last week that wasn't something that was even in consideration when we met on Tuesday was there were directives given to the Justice Department to prosecute quote-unquote local officials who do not comply with these immigration initiatives. Local officials is not defined. What I've come to learn is that's more of a kind of a shot over the bow to local police departments, really not, we believe, to school entities. But again, over the next several weeks, hopefully we'll get more clarity as to what level of impact this will have on us.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Any questions, comments? Mrs. Deardorff, reaching for the mic.
I did have a question, and if you're not prepared for it, that's totally fine. But since you mentioned that schools are no longer federally protected areas, and you mentioned FERPA, are there Pennsylvania or school code specific protections that already exist? Because what you had mentioned really isn't anything new. These are policies that already are in place, statewide, school code wide, or even anything, any local laws that provide those protections that, isn't changing and always has been in place.
I think the privacy protections that I mentioned are where the privacy will be for students. I don't think there's anything in excess that state law provides necessarily. And I think what you have here is you're going to have an old supremacy argument, when a federal initiative kind of goes against maybe a state law issue. And in this instance, and it's one of those kind of like legally mind-blowing issues, you could have federal agencies where there's a protection for students FERPA, the U.S. Department of Education, and then have another federal agency, it's a Immigration and Border Patrol, that actually are conflicting with each other, and we're stuck to decipher what our obligation is to a student under FERPA or under the U.S. Constitution vis-a-vis a warrant that we've been given. So I think those are things that we are working through. But what I mentioned with Plyler, the Constitution, the case of a right to education, FERPA, those core tenets of protections remain.
And I don't know if this would be the right place for this piece, and I don't know how much would any of this follow under exec, or if it's all needs to be done in the public, but you know that we are working, or I would like to see us work as a district to, and I believe that you're, from what you have said and what Mr. Rizzo has shared, is there is planning happening as far as communications within our buildings and with our families, but that is, it's taking place, and we're preparing for that, and open to continuing to have a conversation, but keeping in mind how we can best meet the needs of our school community and what they need.
Just to piggyback off that comment, yes. What my core tenets are is some of these issues of ensuring that kids can feel safe in school, but secondarily is that I'm also making sure that my client is complying with the law as presented. So and sometimes those things are a balancing act, and we're working through that. But that's kind of what that planning is being done, not just here, but virtually every district, rural, poor, rich, whatever. They are preparing for this as needed.
I mean, yeah, correct. We appreciate your guidance. Over the last several days, Ms. Lee shared some resources. Dr. Moore, who happens to be here tonight, has shared some resources. I've gone on the AASA website, has provided some guidance. Fox Rothschild has provided some guidance. So we're kind of pulling that together, and we're going to have a conversation this week with our administrative team to decide, what we need to put in place.
The one other note, and this is true of any school entity, employers kind of in the private sector, this is an issue for their employees. We are a little different. The way that employees become employees of the district, you have to go through a very rigorous screening process, clearances and the like, certifications in most instances. So our employee workforce is likely not going to be affected by this as in some other sectors.
Mrs. Deardorff, do you have anything else? Maybe I could just take my comment up a little bit more broad, because I think when in the end, this topic, comes down to a matter of safety and well-being of our students. And I think it's important to remember that our schools are meant to be safe havens. Our schools are meant to be places where students can learn, can grow, can thrive. And, again, I will only speak for myself when I say, I want to make sure that every student, regardless of their background, feels welcome and protected in our community. And so, I don't think, again, me speaking as one board director, that there should be any outside forces that should seek to undermine that. And I think as a board, we need to remain vigilant on upholding policies that protect the privacy and the rights of our students so that they do feel, safe, and that they can attend school in a way that families can trust that their children are being safe. So, all right.
Since overall this is a very fluid situation, I think it would be practical if our policy committee stays vigilant so we can move and enact as needed for the betterment of the district.
So, as a member of the policy committee, I will say that I don't disagree with you, but Mrs. Deardorff, you had brought to my attention, and I don't know if you want to speak to it, that there have been some school districts in the surrounding Montgomery County that have brought forth resolutions to, I don't know what to say, but to show commitment from a board overall that, you know, kind of what I said, the spirit of what I said in terms of making sure that our students feel welcome, making sure that our students feel safe, making sure that our students can come to school without fear of intrusion in their day-to-day is something that is happening nearby. So I don't know if you want to make any comment about that.
Yeah, I do think that is an avenue that I, as a one board member, and I know that there is others that are interested in pursuing, but I think it's important that we take a calculated and thoughtful approach to that, and make sure that doing something like that, such as a resolution, is meeting the needs of the people that it will affect. So I don't want to, you know, it's easy for me in the position that I'm in to state loud and proud how I feel and what I'm passionate about and what I believe is impactful for those families, but I want to make sure that by reaffirming our commitment to educating and having our students feel safe, that action is actually going to provide that safety for them. So I think it's important to continue. We do have some resources that we've been provided from our solicitor. We have resources from you know, other firms as well and other school districts. I know Mr. Rizzo has been in conversation with superintendents. So I look forward to continuing to have this conversation, but doing it with purpose and thought to make sure that we are doing what's needed by our Spring Forward families.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Fitzgerald? Okay. Moving on to the voting portion of our meeting. We'll start with section 5 minutes, letters A through C. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Moving on to section 6, personnel, letters A through H. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Moving on to finance, section 7, letters A through K. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Questions and discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Moving on to programming and curriculum, section 8, letters A through I. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Questions or discussion?
Madam President, on item I, just a follow-up question to my question from last week.
Okay.
Where we have 7 years with this program, that we're locked in for 7 years of the cost, is there an out in this contract if we get to a point in year 3 or 4 and the district determines that this program is not meeting the needs of the district? Or are we locked into this cost?
I can't speak to that in terms of that contract. That would be an
Dr.
admin
Doherty?
question.
We would be locked in. This would be an upfront cost that we pay for these materials and the resources and the professional development. They continue to provide the service for the digital content over the contract of the 7 years.
So we feel very comfortable with this lock-in for 7 years, since there's no out.
I do, yes, and as well as the committee and Mrs. Angelucci. Most of these products that we work like this do run on these contracts on 6 or 7 or 8 years. The reason behind that is mostly because of cost. We could certainly do year to year, but those costs would then be exponential compared to what we pay for a 7-year contract.
No, I understand that approach and that definition. I'm just curious, and yes, many of our contracts do this, and I ask the same question. If we get into year 3 or 4, and the district determines this is not meeting the needs, are we still locked in? And if we are, then if we make a change, we're paying 2 contracts in.
You would be correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Westwood, go ahead.
Dr. Gardy, just similarly, because we went through this last year with 5 through 8 for math, is that the similar contract term, I imagine?
It's exactly the same for 5 to 8.
So, Mr. Fitzgerald, I know you're not familiar with this, but this is something that I think the district, from your perspective, should look at to where we have some latitude, because that's an extended period of time, and this program is chosen with the best of intentions, and we've done our homework, it's been vetted, but in the real world, sometimes things don't go the way you think they will. And if we're 3 or 4 years into this, it would be great if we had some sort of maneuver.
Well, my anticipation would be if we ever got to that point, and of course we're here where we are with this contract, then we would be making for cause arguments to get out of it in a way that you could then have avenues to either reduce exposure in those out years or to have no exposure. So if we found ourselves in year 2 or 3 and this was either a failing product or it just simply did not deliver in terms of the overall order, then we'd be making those arguments. But I mean, what has been indicated is these are price break types of programs through length of time, ultimately.
Thank you.
And just to clarify for the community, like what we are speaking here is hypotheticals, right? Worst case scenario, contingency, but everything that we've heard from Dr. Gardy and Ms. Angelucci and her team, especially given that we are using this in the 5 through 8 already, and this is allowing us to provide consistency across the lower levels, we feel very confident about that. Correct, Mrs. Gardy?
You are correct, yes. Thank you, Mrs. Hermans.
Thank you.
That's a leading question, Madam President, but okay.
It was intentional. All right. I never ask a question for which I am not expecting that answer. So, all right.
If I could just chime in here. I think it's a valid concern in terms of whether or not the program works. I think there is a commitment among this board of improving math curriculum and math scores. There's a variety of ways to do that. One of them is a hallmark of that is a research-based reading program. Because of the concern is our reading program, math program. One of the things that we did ask for and was provided by the committee was the initial data we have in the 5 through 8 and the progress there. And it, from my review, my uneducation background review, it does appear for the vast majority of kids, it seems to be a program that does propel kids. And this program just didn't come into existence. This is actually a company that created some other programming and then saw a hole and created others. So this isn't kind of like a first jet, and it is to a certain extent, but it isn't. It's a company that has a lot of experience. The reality is that there may be, there is, in fact, there's been talk in the committee meetings about MASH interventionists and other programming that we can use to supplement in addition to this math program. But this program is basically our regular education math program. Based upon the data that we're seeing in the 5 through 8 and based upon teacher report, it does look like it's a program that for the vast majority of students is moving them forward, and the initial data is positive. So I get your concern, and I think you make a valid issue in terms of if we have to get out of it for cause, I think that is, but right now, I do think we do need to make a switch, and we need time for teachers to be trained, which was one of the questions I had is, can we wait on this for more data and really to get, so when the kids walk in the door next year, the teachers to have the proper training to be able to, day one, start the education program, this is the time frame we have to pull the trigger.
And I have no issue with that. Ms. Goldsmith, I'm looking at this from a contractual perspective. This is a serious, large sum of money. If you look at it from a cost perspective, 1.1 percentage of our budget is $1 million, so this is within that realm. So I'm looking at it from a contractual perspective, but I appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Just to clarify, though, for Dr. Gardy, the cost is over 7 years. Can you clarify? It's fixed, but yeah, just can you clarify the terms of the cost?
This would be the upfront cost of the $750,000 based on the contract on the onset happening at this point in time. And then that would no additional cost we would see no additional cost over the 7 years.
And I'd like to add to that, as someone who's been a math teacher in Spring-Ford and was a math coordinator and a curriculum director, this is very typical that we have these long-term contracts. And it is not unusual for us to come across, when we're working on a program, to find that we are not getting the results that we want. And usually the response to that is working with the curriculum, the designer, to adapt it to fit the needs of our students, and that's when we go in and we start having those conversations with them. But the long term, 7 years, is I'm very comfortable with, because as it was stated by Mrs. Goldsmith, we need to allow our teachers and our students an opportunity to get into the program. It takes a couple of years sometimes, but this is very common to have these longer term contracts.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Mr. Jackson?
Ms. Deardorff said no more questions from me, so I will yield my time.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so that was questions and discussion. Any other questions and discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Moving on to Section 9, Conferences and Workshops, letter A. Do I have a motion? So moved. A second? Okay. Questions and discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Moving on to Section 10, Other Business, we're looking at letters B through E.
Can we pull out C and E, please?
Okay, so we will pull out C and E. Are there any others? Okay, so we'll start with Section 10, Other Business, letters B and D. Do I have a motion? So moved. A second? Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 9-0. We'll move on to Section 10, letter C, the 25-26 district calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second? Second. Questions and discussion?
Sorry.
You were the one who separated, so we start with you.
I can't see with my glasses on or off tonight, so I'm struggling. No, that I do need those in them both at the same time. I wanted to thank the administration and the staff, as well as SFEA, for your hard work in putting together the school calendar. I know it's not easy, and everybody has an opinion of how it could be better and what we could change and do, and I think that this is a great example of collaborative teamwork and meeting the needs of our school community. So thank you for your work with that. I wanted to also reflect upon last week's meeting, because there was some implication made that us as school board directors are elected to uphold Judeo-Christian values. And for me, that couldn't be further from the truth. It is my role to uphold the values of our school community and our student population, our community population, our staff population, everyone that makes up that community. Those are the values that I've been elected to uphold. I think we do a great job at Spring-Ford celebrating everyone. And when you celebrate one group, it doesn't take away from celebrating another. So I will stand firm in keeping Eid and Diwali on our school calendar and appreciate the work that our staff does to keep that there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will also just maybe reiterate some of the points, as I did have an opportunity to listen to last week's meeting. And by the way, thank you, Mrs. Deardorff, for leading the meeting. Appreciate that. But, as Mrs. Deardorff said, our community is diverse, and, it's essential that our calendar reflects diversity of our community. And, I think celebrating all, religious holidays and traditions alongside Christian holidays, it's critical. And when you think about these holidays, it's not just about giving time off. It's about allowing our students to demonstrate that we understand and respect the cultural values and traditions of others. And so I think a balanced calendar should promote unity, not divisive comments. And our calendar should not leave any segment of our Spring-Ford community feeling marginalized, unheard, unseen. And children should be able to bring their authentic selves to school. So I agree with you, Mrs. Deardorff. Thank you.
There was, I was making notes during Dr. G and Dr. Moyer's presentation, and I think, what's really important was kind of why I asked that about that number that we know are going through our English language programs is, and it was in your slide, that there's a rising number of ELD students, and that's a changing demographic of the student body. So, I think this board, this administration, this cabinet, this community should take great pride in that we're recognizing our student body is changing and meeting their needs. And this calendar does that.
Thank you. Are there any other comments about the calendar? Because I have one more, if y'all ready for it. No. Okay, so another comment about the calendar, but shifting gears a little bit, is I want to emphasize and take a moment to recognize that our calendar is built for the purpose of allowing our students, our families, and our staff time off. So when the district is closed, it's not just about no school. For me, it means no activities, no practices, no extra commitments. So, and oftentimes you think about extracurriculars like athletics, but this extends beyond athletics. I think athletics is generally just what comes to mind. But when we think about our school, like let's take Labor Day or winter break or Thanksgiving, I really want to see personally, again, me speaking as one director, us upholding this calendar in the spirit for which it is intended. If the district is closed, the district is closed. I think about practices. I think about even optional practices, which frankly, I think puts students at risk of feeling like you're letting others down and having to decide if time with my family is more valuable from that. I don't like to put people in difficult positions. So I think it's crucial that we ensure that our school breaks truly allow for families to disconnect, recharge, free ourselves of the pressure of extracurricular and other obligations. I think we need to honor that time away, knowing how vital it is to students' well-being. And I'd like to see the district honor this commitment in the new school year moving. Well, I want to see the district honor this commitment in a lot of ways, and again, just as we vote today to potentially approve, assuming that it is approved, that we move forward in the spirit for which it's intended. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know what the complete impact of that would be. I would have to do an investigation. I'd have to work with Mr. Jones at the high school as well as athletic director and assistant athletic director to see what that impact would be. But we will certainly engage in that and report back to the board.
Thank you. Okay. So I don't have any other comments about the calendar. Are there any others from the board directors? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Moving on to letter E, section 10, letter E. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Questions and discussion?
I would like to make a motion to table this agenda item.
Until our next meeting?
Yes.
So, Mr. Fitzgerald, if there is a motion on the table, if there is a motion to table, I believe that does not require a second.
No, it does require a second, but then there's actually no discussion. It really, you go to a vote to table it. And it would be tabled to the next meeting anyway, because that's usually, when you have your next agency meeting, can be brought back up for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So, all those in favor of tabling letter 10E, say aye. Aye. Is there any opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. So that motion carries 7-2. So we will table this for let me ask Mr. Fitzgerald, will this show up as an action item for a potential vote at the work session?
Depending on what occurs over the next couple of weeks, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to informational items for which we are not voting. Please take note of them. And again, thank you to our home and school, as always, for the donations and the service and the hours that you provide to making our student experience as wonderful as it is. So thank you for that. And that moves on to board comment. Is there any board comment for tonight?
As always, I'm interested in knowing where we are, if we're any closer to having period products in our school buildings, grades 5 through 12. Last week, you very nicely told us, Dr. G, that you were working with vendors. I'm just excited to hear if maybe we're a little closer.
Yes. By next month, I will have a successful report to you that they will be ordered and on their way to the 5-6.
And the 7th?
And the 7th,
the 8th,
yeah.
And on 9th may already all have them, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the high school already is equipped with products, but the actual equipment needs for the flex need to be ordered.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dr. G, just to confirm, so I know that I've talked to you about this in terms of how those will be dispensed or offered in the buildings. Have we ensured consistency in terms of that? Because, you know, in the past I've seen some bathrooms kind of like put them out there maybe a little bit more front-facing than maybe some others.
Yeah, so the nurse that is leading this has surveyed the nurses in all the buildings, and we're going to have one consistent area in each bathroom where the products will be located with signage.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions, or I should say board comment? Okay, moving on to public to be heard. This can be on any topics, not specific to the agenda. If anyone wishes to speak, please approach the podium. Seeing as though no one is approaching the podium, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.